soundtrack. Told y'all to run the movie. Told y'all I'm gonna show y'all how to clean your dirty money up and good money. Invest into yourself.
Movie. This is the I'm Kinda Famous podcast. I'm your host, Lester Rowe. New week, new episode every Thursday on the Now I'm Kinda Famous podcast network. You can find it on Facebook, Kinda Famous Pod, KINDA Famous Pod, POD, as well as Twitter, but you know I don't really use that Twitter shit like that. So, Facebook, where you want to go. Also, while you're on the interwebs, go to aRoweFilms.com, AROWE Films.com, and that's an easier way to get to the podcast so you can subscribe, do all that kind of stuff. Or you can go to, that's my personal website where you can watch all the video content that I've made, as well as get over there to them clean ass People Collector t-shirts. Now, about those clean ass People Collectors, I have recently decided that I'm gonna come up with a new design for these t-shirts, for a t-shirt rather, that I am planning to push towards some degree of charitable works or donations. I don't know the right way to hit that. But I'm trying to incorporate a charity or a way to donate the proceeds that goes with that. I'll say this is built around mental health, and it's going to be a line of designs as a People Collector design, but it's going to be strictly about mental health. I already know what it's called. I already got the design. I just don't want to talk about it until I'm ready to show it. So that's coming up on the Redbubble merch, or I may find a organization that can print them and also do like a co-sponsor share thing that goes with the charity that or donation that I plan to associate with it. So that's coming up. Maybe by December I'll be ready to talk more about that. What else? Got the Redbubble. Oh, YouTube.com is also where you can see the video content. Any video content that I made for I'm Kinda Famous podcast. We got the I'm Kinda Famous podcast playlist. We also got the Catch These Hands playlist, which is the other podcast. And very soon I'll be starting the Who Up podcast as well, which will be video every time with that particular pod. So that's coming up. I had to rebrand that whole thing. I liked the idea at first. I just didn't think I executed it well. So now we revamping, starting from scratch. And when that goes up, it's going to be dope. And I should say the Who's Up concept is going to be like I'm dropping these at 3 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning. Because Who's Up? So it's coming up. As well, you can on the YouTube, you can see all the video projects I'm working on and made also on aRowe Films. One thing that came up this past weekend, my dude Dave the Caveman Rickles, who you can associate with me and everything now, we made a short film. I feel a really dope short film. I shot it, edited it, wrote it in 24 hours, and we put it out the other day. And it's doing numbers as well, but the biggest thing for me was it's about him not being able to get a fight. And it's a movie. It's not like a doc movie. It's like a little movie. I cheated. I don't really have that many lines in it, but I think I executed the idea that I had in my head exactly how I wanted to, about 80%. And basically, it's about him not being able to get a fight. Some of the politics that went with that, some of the people and comments that he was getting over time about wanting to see him fight. Can't wait to see him fight. And then just the frustration. I hope that I was able to put all that, wrap that up tight in a 5-minute short film, and then with a major announcement at the end. So if you have an opportunity to watch it, I think the best way right now is facebook.com/thecaveman316. And you can watch the full thing. That way, I'll probably share it on the Kinda Famous podcast Facebook page as well. Now, enough of that jibber jabber. Got a guest today. This is a heavy episode. Even though it's a Thanksgiving episode, it's coming out Thanksgiving Day. We'll talk a little bit about some Thanksgiving shit. But this will be a little heavier. Someone sent this story to me, and I felt like I wanted to talk about it, but certain topics I don't like talking about by myself because I need someone to tell me when I'm fucking up, when I'm wrong, or also share alternative ideas and just kind of sit up and do the speculation report. We just talk about it, not necessarily be right, not necessarily be wrong. We just get into it. So I have a friend of mine that I'm gonna have to shit on real quick, very early into the show before we get too far. But Hilary, a social worker, if you will, and I think it's gonna be a great episode to have her on talking about because of some of the issues that kind of will play in part, and then some of the background that I know about her as well. I think works perfect for this. So, Hilary, how you doing?
Hello. I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm shit cold. It's cold as fuck out here.
Congratulations on expanding the brand.
Yeah, you know, got to glow up on them.
Also, I don't know if you are aware of like the rankings, the NFL rankings.
Hey, hold on. I'm shitting on you. You not shitting on me.
Okay, I just thought we would preface that just to set the tone for the hour or so.
I just need. See, I told her before I was cracking this thing open that I was gonna shit on her because I was really planning to shit on them Philadelphia Eagles because I knew she was gonna jump out here with this bullshit. But you know what? Y'all won. Y'all won a nice little football game against my Dallas Cowboys. And I said the only time I would talk about my Cowboys on the show or sports really on the show is when my Cowboys win. And y'all know I ain't really talked that much about the Cowboys this season. So, yeah, Philadelphia.
That's all right. Yeah.
Hey, but quick question. Y'all got some rings over there?
How'd I know that was coming? You got to be more original than that.
Nah, I don't. You need some rings.
Working on it. We're working on it.
Y'all like a thought girlfriend. Ain't never getting one. It's okay.
We'll see.
All right. So first,
so at the end of February.
Nah, don't even worry about it. You shouldn't even put that out there. Don't even put that out there. The reason she's from I gotta say Pennsylvania. Right?
Correct.
I'm used to I don't know why I always feel like Philadelphia is a state, but I don't know. I'm not used to people just saying Pennsylvania. Well, so what's the weather like in Pennsylvania?
Chilly, crisp and cold.
Okay. I mean, it's like that over here too, but it's cool. So this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna talk a lot. We're gonna talk crime, but what's it? How you say her name?
Cyntoia.
Cyntoia Brown has taken the internet by storm. In like 24 or 48 hours or so, I get a thing. Someone tells me I should do a show about it. And I said, I read very little about it. It was just enough in that one thing that made me say, yeah, that's interesting enough for me to talk about. And so that's how we got here. But before we talk about that, before we jump too deep into that, I think it'd be fair and right with you being a Philly person to start with the Meek Mill situation. What are your initial thoughts and feelings about that?
There's a lot of initial thoughts and feelings about that. Obviously, I mean, it was a hot button topic across the country, but here in Philly even more so. And in my social media network in particular, I have a lot of fellow youth development professionals, academics that span, across racial and ethnic and gender identities. And so there was a wide range of responses. Most of them that were a little bit unsettling to me, honestly. I'll preface that with I'm a homer, so I like Meek's music, but I'm always going to ride for the home team in general. And I've been a fan of his for a while. But there was like themes across what people were saying around here, ranging from critical, rooted in love to straight up bougie. And some of the themes were, I hope folks bring the same energy to their PTA meetings, or I hope they're right at their uncles or their brothers that are in the same situation. And my initial response to that is, I hope that same thing too, but that's a wild assumption to assume that all these folks that came out to rally for Meek don't go to their children's PTA meetings or aren't readily involved in their children's lives. That's a wild generalization.
Do you think it's a fair one though?
I think that disengagement is an issue when, if you ask any teacher, any school-based social worker, they're going to tell you that parent involvement is an issue. But when you make a blanket statement like that, it comes off as though people don't give a shit to be in their children's lives. And I think that there's is there a small percentage that maybe didn't want to be parents and are just willfully neglecting that role? Sure, that you can find that pocket of parent anywhere. Or we're talking about a population of people that have an increased amount of stress. So these are folks that are working jobs that, like, you can't request to get off early to come to this PTA meeting as easily as someone with a salary full-time position. You have just a whole rack of things that make it more complicated to stay present and active in a way that adheres to like a school district setting and what society wants that family to look like. So I think it's far more complicated than just saying, you'd go out and rally for Meek, but you're not where your kids need to be. I'm sure that there were some deadbeat fathers and mothers in that crowd, just like.
But what about
at the mall? You'll find them too.
But what about like just in general, outside of the specifics of school involvement, but as well as when you do have when people do have family members that are in these incarcerated situations, or maybe not even something that's so negative, maybe just things that are positive for the community that doesn't have the same rally cry or support as they're giving Meek Mill.
Sure. I hesitate on that too, because there's a lot of, is there as much energy as you would hope, where everybody that's deeply affected by these issues is out there actively learning and getting involved? That's not across the board, but it's neglectful to pretend like there's not, and I'm speaking specifically about Philadelphia right now, but there's a lot of grassroots community-based work that's being done by folks in their own neighborhoods to make the changes that they want to see. And so I don't think it's fair to make that blanket statement as well. And another theme that came out was this conversation about accountability. Like he knew he was on probation, this, that, and the third. You violate. And I'll always advocate for personal responsibility. I have these conversations with the young people I work with that are on probation for petty drug crimes, and we could have conversations all day about, do we fundamentally agree or disagree with, drug policy law, but the fact doesn't change that right here today it's illegal and you're on probation for it. And so if our goal is to get you out of the juvenile system so that you can avoid being caught in the adult system and having a likelihood of getting out be slimmer and slimmer as you stay, which is what we're watching Meek go through right now. So it's like, yeah, you have to take personal accountability, but you're encouraging that in a system that's inherently unjust and unfair.
Did he fuck up?
He violated his probation.
Why do you
He
think?
violated his probation.
Why do you think he does get? I say he does, but here, let me rephrase that. Why do you think he gets this support this way? Like why is he getting so much support? And then obviously you don't know, but why do you think? Your speculation on that.
I think that he has so much love in Philly in particular, you know, before this incident, and now then more so because there are so many young black men in the city of Philadelphia whose lives parallel his, and he's speaking directly to them and speaking directly to their lived experience. And that's a very real part about his persona and his music, and I think that resonates, especially if there's not, you know, and to go, I don't want to jump ahead to Cyntoia, but these stories always carry legacies of, you know, generational trauma with them. And so if you're in these situations, it just, I even lost my train of thought with that. I'm getting too passionate about it.
But, all right, so with Meek, I look at it a couple ways. I mean, I look at it larger. Granted, I'm not in Philly, and so I don't touch that nerve that other people have there. But for me, I look at it in a way like you can't fuck, like, you know, the system. I look at it like we know the system in a way. We know that the system doesn't work. The people that exist within the system don't work it well, and then there's things that make it harder to work for some people as well, mostly minorities, what I mean by that. But he knew, and we, like, it's not guesswork. Like, we know it's fucked up. So when you know it's fucked up, and granted, the average cat don't have millions of dollars on the table. It almost feels like,
right. And I think that that's what a lot of the frustration that I feel like that's what a lot of the frustration was rooted in, whether folks were saying that explicitly or not, was like, yeah, they might be agreeing that the system is fucked up in general, but also this sense of, you know, you knew what it was, and there are so many other people that are living this real life situation and don't have the resources and don't have the name power attached to it, that don't have a chance of even having the opportunity for a lawyer to present a chance for a new hearing. They're still sitting pre-trial because they can't post bail to get out. So I think that's a frustration that people carried as well.
But even parole, because parole is a sentence of leniency, basically.
Right.
So for him, I think as well, people go, well, my so-and-so legitimately didn't do something, and he's sitting up, whereas this guy has got a lenient sentence, and he's out in the world able to perform and essentially enjoy a really decent life as long as he, you know, follow the rules of his probation.
Sure. I mean, I hear that. There's a lot of people sitting in jail for crimes that they did commit that are still sitting there for ludicrous amounts of time. There's no rehabilitation or repairing whatever damage may have been done to a community that comes out of incarceration, period.
Do you think he's the right one for this, to be the poster boy basically right now for justice?
That's a really loaded question. And I'll be honest that as a white woman, this question has so much of a racial aspect that I walk carefully and thoughtfully into, you know, responding to this.
Well, I'll.
My immediate response is, yeah. Why wouldn't he be, if he is representative, aside from the point of success that he's made, that is rare, that, you know, achievement of wealth and fame. His life he represents the population of people that are most affected by mass incarceration and unjust sentencing guidelines and policies.
But
so
I think it's hard
I
to.
think that
I think it's kind of hard to say let's set aside the success, because then what makes, granted, outside of the way he looks, what makes him really that much different when we get upset at a Bernie Madoff or anyone white with wealth and access. Like, I mean, his ability to get what he got is somewhat parallel to them more than the average Khalif Browder type of situation.
Sure. And just, I mean, I hear that. I do hear that. I think that if we step back and look at it in a bigger sense and outside of Meek specifically, is that this is a huge opportunity for people, young people in particular, to everybody has their own entry point into consciousness and social awareness and activism. And it's really not, I don't see what the point is in judging what another individual's entry point might be. Whether that's, that's irrelevant to me. I just want folks to get to that point in an organic way and really dive into it and learn about the issues that they feel fired up about. And if me getting locked up in this case is the entry point for a whole bunch of young people who are directly impacted by these issues to gain some awareness and to dive in and have those conversations, and we have to take on the risk, and I say we as, you know, a slightly older generation, to provide space for those conversations and actions to happen. And I think it's dangerous to write it off as a silly thing without trying to capitalize on that moment of this could be an entry point into social consciousness and activism for a lot of people that didn't have fully formed opinions prior to that. And I think that that's a really hopeful thing.
I know I always get a message of some form that gets mad at like where I decide to switch subjects, because it's like, you keep going, and then I just switch subjects. But so I am going to switch subjects right now. I mean, we could obviously, when it comes to this conversation, it can go on and on, but we got another piece of this that is going to probably further expand on this. And a lot of so I want to preface this whole Cyntoia Brown conversation with that I generally don't pick a subject because of not so much of what's happening right now as much as why it's interesting to me. What the things about it that makes it, as you said, about how we develop and find this consciousness of our activism or whatever it is. I feel like this is a conversation that's somewhat appropriate right now with what's happening in current events, which let me go on the record. I will eventually have this sexual misconduct, indecency, like this whole thing. I will do a whole show on this topic. Okay. And you know, I'll reveal this because we're getting real close to getting this thing nailed down. So we're gonna I'm taking the I'm Kind of Famous podcast to the barbershop. I'm gonna sit down with we're gonna set up in the barbershop, and we're gonna have a male discussion. And in that discussion, we will address you know, this whole rape, sexual misconduct thing, because I feel like men don't, and I have how I feel about it, and I know what some of my friends feel about it, but I think an open discussion is appropriate because maybe some dudes don't know that they're being inappropriate. The idea of a dude having a conversation with a dude, seeing a chick walk down the street or at a store or whatever, and then they like, damn, she look good, and the homie goes, dude, she looks 16 or 17, and they go, well, if she's 16, I'm 16. Like, that is one, an irresponsible statement, and that is an incriminating situation for yourself. And I don't know what makes a person say that or think that. But maybe because no one is seriously telling them that's a ridiculous thing to say or think. And
I think that there's not other men telling. Women have been saying that this shit is ridiculous for some time, and I think the point that you're making is that men aren't having these conversations amongst themselves, and so I'm excited to hear. Excited, and I'm not going to lie, I would have some trepidation about listening to that.
Well, y'all know what I do, man. I keep it honest. So, I mean, it's going to be a lot of honesty there, and I hope it is, because I think we know when to not say the dumb shit, but if we're not openly saying the dumb shit and then actually expanding on it, I think you have to. I think the dumb shit got to be said first. And then if we can realize that people say dumb shit, now I gotta go on the journey to figure out, let's keep peeling the layers back. I don't like having surface conversations about shit like this because it's annoying when I see it on TV. So I don't want to do that with my show either. But we're gonna do it. But also we're also gonna have with a I'm also planning to rebuttal that same show with a conversation with some sort of advocacy group, and hear their perspective, take some of the things that I learned from this conversation, ask them, see what they think, and do this whole thing. So it's going to happen. We're getting to the final stages of it. So that's like an announcement. And I also probably should say at the end of the show, there's another conversation being had at the end of this particular show with me and a friend where we talk about some of the sexual indecency things and the difference between what is just sick versus a fetish, and if there's a mental health aspect involved in that as well. So the end of the show have an additional like 15 or 20-minute conversation as well. So there's that. And right here is when I take a break and we come back. So here's a break and we're back. All right. I got these ads now, so I got to make sure I have a spot for the ads.
Word.
All right. Now, so the Cyntoia Brown conversation is appropriate right now because there's a lot of fucked up shit happening in the news that involves, we'll say, sexual predators, child predators, and decent people. Today is not the episode that I litigate any of that, but if you are in America right now, you pretty much know these things are happening. So I want to take that as the opportunity to have this conversation and find out ways that we can take bits and pieces of that, apply it here, as well as have the conversation about what is going on with this criminal justice system in ways. Because I find that this particular story is interesting because it really, to me, comes down to what you believe. But is a crime, or is the motive? Like, it's so many pieces. I find it to be a multifaceted piece to me in the limited information I do have about it. I'm
curious what the aspect of the story was that made you want to talk about it.
So first off, I'll say the main aspect of the story. Let me pull up my ish. The main aspect of the story. Okay, first someone sent it to me, or tagged me in a post and said you need to talk about this. And it was one that Rihanna posted. And I want to make sure I read that in full because it's also one of those things that bothers me about social media activism. So here's the thing. Here's what Rihanna posted about this. Or I don't know if she wrote this or whatever, but this is what she posted on her Instagram. It says, imagine at the age of 16 being sex trafficked by a pimp named Cutthroat. Now, I just think that's a dope ass name. But a trafficked by a pimp named Cutthroat. After days of being repeatedly drugged and raped by different men, you were purchased by a 43-year-old child predator who took you to his home to use you for sex. You end up finding the courage to fight back and shoot and kill him. You're arrested as a result, tried, convicted as an adult, and sentenced to life in prison. This is the story of Cyntoia Brown. She'll be eligible for parole when she is 69 years old. Free Cyntoia Brown. That's a hashtag piece. This was also with Kim Kardashian attached to this, saying the system has failed. It's heartbreaking to see a young girl sex trafficked. Then when she has the courage to fight back, is jail for life. We have to do better and do what's right. I've called my attorneys yesterday to see what can be done to fix this. So the question you asked me, I'll unwrap that throughout the next half hour or so, I guess we got on this. But so the social media, when I say social media activism, I mean when we end up reacting to very little information, but we move to the main idea, but then we also move because a celebrity told us to move, or presented it, and now it's big. And I just always am curious to, like, how did that person get it? For me to get to Rihanna, the two marquee names that were on it primarily was Rihanna and Kim Kardashian that I kept seeing everywhere. And I'm just like, how did they get to it? Like,
right, do we know why? Because this is an old story, and it just resurfaced out of nowhere, seemingly. Do we know why that happened?
I looked into it a little bit. Now, I need to also say this is like days old in terms of how this just kind of popped. But no, I don't know. And I looked and I read a couple pieces trying to figure out how did this come to enlightenment to these people. And the story itself is like, reading that is like, Jesus Christ. And that lured me in. And I was like, I gotta know what's going on here, because before I talk about something, I like to know most of the good facts behind it, so I don't say anything that sounds ridiculous. Because I'm gonna do that on my own, but I won't do it on behalf of somebody else's. And I'm okay with being wrong. We did a whole show about the Kanika Jenkins case, and it was a big speculation episode, and everything about what was out there at the time seemed right. It seemed what it looked like, and it wasn't what it looked like as it ended. I mean, you couldn't have convinced me that she walked into a freezer or went into a freezer, or everything that was told to us, everything that we saw looked like a murder. The final report of it doesn't really gel with murder, but her friends were very fucked up, so they got the public opinion court trial and were found guilty. That's good enough for me, I guess, but I don't want to do that. So I'm okay with that, because that's the information we had about that, and so we reacted to the information that was really out there. There was a lot of it. It was like a real life whodunit. In this case,
Truly, yeah.
It's we know it. We know what happened. We know the events. But the second thing that I thought about with this is, do we just believe her story, or did something else happen? Did what she say happen? And then that's where I have to kind of get back from the emotional part of it, where it's like, damn, that's such a fucked up situation. That's a fucked up situation that she was in, and that's a fucked up thing that happened to her in trial. But was it murder, or was it, as it says, courage to fight back? And so that leads me to the I can't say this name. I need to respect
Cyntoia.
Cyntoia. The Cyntoia Brown story, the little documentary that's on YouTube. It's a pretty good documentary. It's made by BBC, made in 2011. And she is 29 years old now. So y'all know I do documentaries. So I'm assume when this was filmed, she was around 20 years old.
Okay.
So, all right. Now, that's the surface of it. What do you think? You said you watched it. What do you think after watching it? Or what's your initial response to seeing this whole thing just pop up?
Yeah, it felt. I mean, it felt a little random seeing it research. I remember hearing about it. I guess in like maybe 2010, 2011. But to see it resurface, and I think you're probably right, just about the whole kind of socio-political climate surrounding sexual assault and women and girls right now in general had to do with that. And the story is heartbreaking. Before you even get to that evening and whatever events might have gone down, it's a heartbreaking life story for not just her, but we get to see, a little bit from that. I think it was the BBC special. Really, a family, traumatic family history, and so it's just a difficult thing to wrap your head around. A young person, when young people live these lives, and I'm always going to be inclined to believe the fact that she's never tried to say that she didn't pull a trigger. She's always said that, yes, I killed him. And she, I think, has articulated very clearly what went on that evening. And we don't know because the only other person that can say anything is dead, as the lawyer so brutally pointed out in that special. But that's all, is that truly any different than sitting on the case that you have to believe two competing stories that you still don't know what the truth is. You're still deciding what you believe over the other.
Well, one part in the documentary, they talk about, and this is trial. Everyone wants to win. Everyone thinks their version of the story is right. That I believe is a medical examiner said that he was already in that position. Basically, the guy that she's accused of killing was shot 4 times in the back. Her story is that she felt like he was reaching for something, or reaching for a gun in this case, and so she already had a gun on her and shot him 4 times. The medical examiner for the prosecution said that he was already laying that way and it was murder. Which, here's the difficult part for me, is for all intents and purposes, she was I think prostitute is a bad word today, so a sex worker. And she had a gun on her, so she really Jesus Christ. That's the problem with the initial statement that was put out that made so many people respond. And I'm slightly getting off of the subject of her as much as the social media activism. I don't mind being activated about something like her case if the information is right, if we go into it right. You don't have to, like, after watching that doc, you don't have to editorialize it with some fantasy story. Like, you don't have to. It's already shitty. And when you go in there, like, she what is this last line? Like, She was sold. She was purchased by a 43-year-old child predator. This whole, let me say the whole thing because I think it's only fair to do so. A 43-year-old child predator who took you to his home to use you for sex. You end up finding enough courage to fight back and shoot and kill him. When even she says that they were supposed to have sex, and I forget what happened. He was reaching over for something. She felt like he was reaching for a gun, so she took her gun and shot him. That doesn't sound like a person like looking for courage as much as like, hell no, I'm not getting killed first.
Right. It's a survival instinct. And any, that's how trauma works. That's how your body and brain experience and react to trauma, of which she has been through a tremendous amount. And so whether she walked into that house willingly, which I think you could devote another hour just to, unpacking that piece.
Yeah.
It's no different than a war vet coming back and being triggered by seemingly nothing to an outside perspective and responding in a really severe and sudden and sometimes violent way. It's not crazy to me to imagine any sudden movement or anything. She already said she was mad uncomfortable going in to the situation, so her spidey sense is elevated already, and everybody reaches a breaking point. She details the sexual trauma that she has been through in that special, and so just thinking of from like a woman's perspective, from a human perspective, like everybody has a breaking point and everybody's capable of doing that. And survival is a human instinctual response. And I agree with you. I think she's brave for a lot of other reasons, but the way that story was pitched was unnecessary the actual falsehoods kind of like there's inaccurate details that
when she says falsehood, she means there. Lies. I don't.
Right.
There we go. False. This falsehood. This Trump word. What did you think?
True, yeah.
What do you think of that book of memories that she had? She talks about. She pulls out this like spiral, and it was like just her writing book of memories, which she said a lot of them are bad. At speaking of her trauma, she talks about sleeping with. I think she's like she didn't want to she didn't want to feel dumb or something like that, and she was talking about having sex. It's dumb for her at her age to have had sex with 36 people, and she goes down this list, and I wrote it down. She said 11 of them wasn't statutory rape. Now if this goes down when she's 16 years old, like that's crazy. 11 wasn't statutory rape. 3 of them was relatives. 9 of them was protected sex. 9 of them was girls, and 4 of them were prostitutes. Of her 36 people she slept with at her age. That
and I think baffling. She says like 4 are there was only 4 that she like wanted to have.
Oh yeah. It was like some that she did like that's. I mean, for trauma, let's say that's like. I mean, fuck, not even for trauma, for anything at her age. That's crazy. Or I shouldn't say crazy, but that's like, and she was sex trafficked. I mean, that's a fact. And the fact that like I don't get it. Like beyond her case, I don't get it. I don't know what makes a older man. Fuck that. An older man, and what she says, what was it? 9 females. That's fucking crazy.
Yeah, that I don't know. That disturbed me, and I had a very distinct, like, visceral response to that fact. The women piece, and I don't. I haven't fully unpacked that for myself, but I know that it was there. And I think just in these, it's society looks at older men and young women very differently than older women and young men. And that's a dangerous separation to make. That just was a point to throw out there, slightly unrelated. But
no, I mean, shit, it's all related. We're talking about it. We can make it work. Yeah, I don't like. I don't understand. I don't understand pedophilia, and it's one thing. I don't even know how it's so. That's her story is so crazy, so. I can't call it crazy. It's so wild to me because it's so many layers. Like you said earlier, there's 3 generations of this kind of activity in her life, in her family. And so for her to even damn near inherit it like it's a genetic thing on top of just all this being that age, and just when you listen to her talk in this movie, she feels so much older than she is.
Mm-hmm.
Like she talks hard. Like I mean, clearly she's in the street, but she talks so hard. Like she's already lived a grown up life, and it's so like it in ways it's frustrating for me because it's like you ain't supposed to be talking like this.
Right.
Like even the way she was talking to the cop was like a grown person. Like matter of factly, like, dude, I know what's up. Come on with the handcuffs, man. You said that ain't enough. 4 of us was in there. You talking about we had 3. Somehow all 4 of us had the right ones. Go get the other ones. Bring them to me. Like her energy felt grown, and it was so intense to me. Just watching, like it makes you pause and just want to, like, you look at her body language. Her body language is grown.
Yeah, she's been literally fighting to survive her entire life, and it's at the one point it's really heartbreaking when she said, I just have been trying to be accepted for the last 18 years, and that she breaks it down to such the most basic level of human needs that we forget. And I think that people often forget when they look at cases like this, or any case in general, and are very quick to, and I fully admit to participating, especially in big sensationalized stories, but very quickly jumping and taking a really emotional and hopefully fact-based stance to the cases, is that there's a human being on both sides of the story, and decisions and choices get made in a split second. And we all know, whether, most of us haven't killed people, but we all know what it's like to have made a choice and wish that we had 5 extra seconds to think about it, or could have done it differently. And so it's not that difficult to place yourself in a space where you can understand at least the fragility of the instant in which decisions are made, especially for a 16-year-old, that has lived the life that Cyntoia Brown had lived up to that point, and was faced with, even if we ignore that bedroom, the facts that we do know about her life and the moments leading up to being in that bedroom.
That is like, it seems like, or at least for me, I ain't even really that interested in what happened in that bedroom. Like it feels like it's so, it's a major part of her life, but to me a minor part of her story. Like it's so much, like she a little bit before the scene you talked about when she said she was trying to be accepted, they asked her, what was similar to all these dudes that she had encounters with, other than the fact, or her. Let me be more specific. Her dad, the dude that she killed, and Cutthroat, that her pimp. I mean, I don't know the other sex trafficker word, or captive, or I don't know.
I think pimp is sufficient.
All right, yeah, y'all know. Yeah, I know my audience. Y'all know what pimp is. And she said, other than being men, that they were selfish. And when she expanded on that, she said that they want to be justified for what they did, or I think it was justified their actions or something like that. And when she broke it down, I was like, that's, you know what? It's kind of right. Like, she was talking about the pimp had her out there prostituting so he could buy a truck with these rims on it, so everyone would look at him and feel a certain way. Her pops wanted, to have people look at him some way. I did the best I could, which I thought was interesting because, when you think about deadbeat dads or things like that, like, it's kind of like a go-to line. And she said about the guy that she murdered, or accused, or charged, sent. Well, I guess she has to be a murderer because that's what she was found as. That he wanted to feel like adored or something, or wanted, like, by having sex. And for her to be able to like, because I forget what the initial thing she said was. And then, it's a trick that I do as well when I'm making film, is like, when someone says something that seems so surface, but you can feel like something behind it, you just don't say nothing. You let them sit there in their own silence in that statement. And then eventually they want to fill that dead air with words. And usually that's when they say the honest thing. After, like, you just sit there and wait with them, and it becomes real. And that's when she said what she said about they're looking for acceptance and admiration. But I go back to, like, she is far too fucking young to break that down like that.
Yeah, she has really profound, like, insight and observation on human experience that is so far beyond what, like, developmentally a 16-year-old should have any idea about.
What should happen here?
Yeah.
What should happen here with her?
With her specifically, I mean, I don't know. I'm ignorant about Tennessee state law and what, like, is even realistic to happen as far as like, the potential to re-examine facts or retry anything.
Well,
but I think
as a social worker, let's say this. Let's do this. We'll let you do something like this. Flex your muscle a little bit. As a social worker, do you think she is a person that could readjust comfortably to free life?
Yes, I think that most people can if the proper supports are in place. The longer that you've been in that, she's been at that point about having been in solitary confinement for 10 months, which is a whole other, spend a whole hour on that too. Readjustment and reentry is a really, really multi-layered and challenging experience. But it can be done, but it requires a tremendous amount of support, really from families and communities. That just is not our current climate just doesn't. We're so concentrate so much on incarceration and not either
Rehabilitation.
like individual rehabilitation if that's something that needs to be done, but even more importantly, this idea of repairing whatever damage you may have done in a community and a meaningful reconnection. If people, if everybody really truly understood and cared about how important the first 3 years of life are, how important healthy families and environments are in the first 3 years of life, our world would look entirely different. The systems we would have in place, the services we would have in place, the priorities that would be reflected in policy and action would be wildly different. And hope things would, we wouldn't have as many Cyntoias or me or anybody else in between if that was valued, if healthy children and families were valued.
It seems though with her, and the reason I asked that question is, you know, a lot of times in general, it's hard to get inmate readjusted back to regular life, free world. But we're talking about a person who pretty much had a shitty situation before going to prison, and as well in her more impressionable years. And when we look at her family situation, that wasn't the best. And you had I forget who she was to Cyntoia, the black woman who felt like, you know, I didn't know, and this and this and that. And Cyntoia felt like, I mean, even she felt like Cyntoia didn't trust her, but also Cyntoia felt like I was trying and you weren't listening to me or hearing me. So when I ask that question, I know it's kind of hard to figure out all the pieces, but it almost feel like for her personally, I think it would take so much for her to trust anyone, because everyone abused her or neglected her in some form. Not to mention whatever, you know, she has a part in the documentary where she cut her hair and they asked why you cut your hair, because I don't want to be pretty. Me being pretty or attractive has caused me nothing but problems. Like, that's baffling. In the world, we put her in a world where everyone's on social media trying to find the prettiest version of themselves. And asking her to come back into this when before she went in, it was shit. And she goes to prison and whatever's happening. And I can only guess the reason why she doesn't want to feel pretty, because she's probably being tossed around in jail. And then have to come out in this world where fucking every version of this new version of our tech world is about how good, for most people, how good I can make myself look. So she has a constant reminder that you are trash compared to what everyone else is pretending they are. And that's what's kind of like difficult when I look at her stories. Like, damn, are we even capable of helping a person like that?
I do, and I do believe that. I wish that there was more people that were available and qualified and capable of providing the depth of, just from like a therapeutic perspective, of just having a place where she can build safety to process her responses before you even get to, if she wants to talk about and process her trauma, but just her ability to function interpersonally in the world. And I have seen, you know, young people with not her precise story, but ones that damn near mirror the level and type of trauma. And I've seen them start to work towards some semblance of reclaiming their power. But so I do believe that it's possible, but it takes a village, and it just that notion itself is super threatening to individuals such as Cyntoia, whose only idea of village has been nothing but abusive and neglectful, and violent and dangerous. So it's an uphill slope for sure, but I think it's a scarier prospect to accept that it might not be possible.
What is missing in our social services departments or programs that are desperately needed?
How much time do we have left?
Not a lot. You know, that was like one of them good wrap up questions.
Yeah. I think empathy. Just there's a lot of really, really, really qualified and dedicated individuals that do the frontline work, but empathy is sometimes missing from the higher levels where politics and hierarchies come more into play, and that ultimately impacts the most suffering people that are trying to be served. And it is really, really complex when so much of the most marginalized and like families and individuals that are in the most fucked up situation and abject poverty are families of color, and we need more people of color doing. There's so many that are doing really important work, but to create buy-in and safe space, there's so much stigma about mental health and seeking treatment and help for it in communities of color. And I get that when most of your options are old white men or white women, that creates a real barrier to feeling like you have a safe space to begin to dive into these things. And so I think that's really important to promote. There's a lot of low-level underpaid, like behavior support workers that are folks of color, of course, that's across the board kind of in our labor market, but we need to be promoting and supporting and encouraging and funding more therapists of color, more community-based ideas and treatment and interventions that are of the people and for the people.
And when I'm just going to assume that the emphasis of the people of color is just to be more relatable to the people who are needing, or are you also feeling in your experiences that it's harder for young people of color to want to take any advice or direction because they don't feel like this person knows or connects with them, I guess?
I think for young people in this generation, race probably plays into it, but it's more accepting anything. There's a real cynicism towards the world and this younger generation that they've watched their parents and our generation be the last ones to be sold this kind of bullshit American dream. I mean, they're not buying it. They know that the things they're being force fed in school is bullshit. They see that the way that the world is functioning around them is bullshit. And so I think talking to anyone kind of in a generation above or older is really frustrating for them, especially if probation told them they have to come or school told them they have to go talk to somebody. It's like that buy-in is really difficult to get, understandably, and that's the job of a quality clinician, to create a space where you understand that and can welcome that. But I think it's really important to feel like the unique experience of being a person of color, a woman of color, a queer person, whatever it may be, that is the parts of your identity that are marginalized. I think it's important to be in a space where you're really diving into intimate parts of yourself with someone that you feel can understand those aspects of your lived experience firsthand.
Now I know I just already hear it and see it coming that they want me to deep dive into that whole piece, but I'm not. Maybe another episode, because that's a lot, right? Just listening to it, I'm like, I should ask this. No, because I already know that's another 25, 30 minutes. So, not going to do that one.
I'd be happy to come back if you'll have me.
All right. Now you know how it's like. You can't be nervous the second time.
I won't be.
Now this is the Thanksgiving episode, which, I'll tell you this, and all this sad talk we did, I hope by now you should feel thankful if you're not in these situations, or maybe in not situations that bad. Cyntoia is probably one of these situations where many, many of women, I hope, can look at and go, I got work to do, but it could be worse. Now, that's tough. Well, I know a lot of tough situations in course of what's happening that we're seeing in our media right now with a lot of these incidents happening. But I invite all of you listening to go watch the Cyntoia Brown story, the little BBC doc. There's probably going to be people trying to make their own little new docs and things right now based around it. I think it's better to watch this old one that doesn't have any of the sensationalized, was maybe even celebrity aspect to it, where someone goes and tries to rework the information to make it fit an agenda. I think this is a very non-biased doc. I think it comes out very even. There's parts of it I wish they explored more, but as I said, I feel like what happened that night is so minor to her whole life, and I think the doc does a very good job at showing this person as a profile and not lean so much on the crime. There's some things about the crime itself that go either way. That's what the courts and prosecutors and defense do. But I think how we got to that point is very important, because it is showing a lot of signs early that something wasn't right. And this is like in 2011 when this comes out. So this happens early 2000s in her life of how she gets this way. So I invite people to watch that. It was on YouTube. I'll have it in the show descriptions. But Thanksgiving, you're going to have a good Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
I don't condone genocide, but I'm eat though.
Shit. I don't condone it either, but a feast is happening. Oh man.
Indeed.
You gotta get your patties pies. Matter of fact, put like this. When you go to whatever place that you gonna eat at, if you're a person that go over there and you see some potato salad, or you see about 5, 6 pies, and you gotta ask who made what pie, because you know who make the good shit, this podcast is for you. Now, we're gonna go ahead and wrap this up. So right now I'm still thinking if I'm gonna add that extra 20-minute conversation, because we did go a little long on this. So if I do add it, it'll be starting right about now. But if I don't add it,
yeah, I'm like, I can't right now, unfortunately. But I'm definitely down to dive into it.
Well, no, I'm talking about I got an extra adding on where we talk a little bit about sexual pedophiles, the mental health aspect and things like that. Whole different conversation that I'm just gonna insert in if I do it. If I don't, make sure you go over to the Kind of Famous. Well, first off, this is what we're gonna do. First of all, for you, I need to know, what are you listening to and what are you watching? Give me one thing that the people should hear, one thing that people should watch.
Ooh, I listened to the new Saha the Prince album today on my way to work for the first time, and I thoroughly enjoyed the first listen through.
Hold on. I'm gonna pause you. That new Africa, man. That new Africa, that shit is heat.
Yeah.
Continue.
And I'm like, every other American. I just finished binge watching both seasons of Stranger Things. So I'm not real original on that front.
No, you're not. But you could go watch Mindhunter. That's on Netflix. I watched that. I don't know if anyone's watching that.
Yeah, I've heard. Maybe I'll get into that.
There you go, Mindhunter. What am I listening to? What album did I just listen to? Division, new album. DVSN. Okay. I like it. I like it a lot. I forget what it's called. Because I'm listening. Man, I like the Drake crew. I like the OVO crew. So I dig it. Division. I cannot think of the new album. I know what album that ain't jamming. And you can tell him I said it. What's that sad singing ass motherfucker? Beach House, something other.
Ty Dolla $ign.
Ty Dolla $ign. That new one ain't it. It ain't it. I ain't messing with it. So you can skip it if you ain't heard it, but whatever. This is the I'm Kind of Famous podcast. I'm wishing everyone happy Thanksgiving. December 1st. I can't fucking announce that, so I'll wait next week. Yeah, have a happy Thanksgiving. Appreciate everybody for making it this far. 42 episodes. Jesus. Plus, I got the new podcast, Catch These Hands podcast. We're on episode 3 now, and pretty soon we'll be starting the Who Up podcast as well. That's a video podcast as well as regular audio. Kind of Famous Pod, KINDA Famous Pod, POD on social media, Facebook, Twitter. You can also subscribe. Subscribe, like, tell a friend, share. iTunes, Google Music, Stitcher, TuneIn, anywhere that you listen to podcasts, you can find the I'm Kind of Famous Podcast Network on all those platforms. Subscribe to it. Never miss an episode. And till then, tell your mama I said hi.
So, in light of you being kind of famous,
why the hell I'm kind of famous? Who the hell she know?